Hey you guys, Amanda Jensen here. Nice to see you again and welcome to my channel. I make content for models and actors or aspiring models and actors, and I'm also learning on my own journey to becoming a model and an actor. And so I make content that would also be helpful for me. And if you like content like that, please go ahead and subscribe below. So today I'm going to go over some acting methods and techniques and some ideas on how you can actually put them into practice. I have had formal training on some of these methods, but for others, I really don't know that much. So I did some research online, and the information comes from Backstage and Wikipedia and some other sources. And today I'm going to overview and review 6 acting methods and techniques. And you could definitely read on these techniques on your own, but if you're like me, it's easier just to have someone tell you. Anyway, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, starting with the earliest approach on my list, that would be Shakespeare. Shakespeare produced most of his known works between 1589 and 1613. What do you think of when you think of Shakespeare?
This have I thought good to deliver thee.
Why is Shakespeare important? Well, Shakespeare was really prolific in writing and playwrights, and he influenced our English language. He's credited with publishing 39 plays in his lifetime. Shakespeare is important because his writing changed the English language. Shakespeare's plays also influenced every playwright who came after him. Some researchers even believe he wrote parts of the New King James Bible. He shaped the way we speak. Shakespeare is credited with coining a lot of phrases, like 1,700 to 3,000 words in the English language. So words like gloomy, majestic, eventful, or phrases like catch a cold or vanish into thin air came from Shakespeare. The skills required to perform Shakespeare's plays are also the foundation of classical acting. If you can find a way to embody Shakespeare's text in a fully realized character, you can confidently bring pretty much any other character to life. According to the Shakespeare Society's artistic director, Michael Sexton, actors should also study Shakespeare because it expands their humanity and it's good for the soul, he says. And, quote, if anyone gets the opportunity to perform Shakespeare at a high level, it is a privilege and an enormous joy. As an actor, you should be familiar with the most frequently performed Shakespeare plays. According to a 2016 study, the top most 5 frequently performed plays are Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Twelfth Night, and A Midsummer Night's Dream. All right, so here's an action idea to become more familiar with the Shakespeare approach. Watch videos from the great performances or plays. You can do this online on YouTube or, of course, go to a theater to watch one of the plays. The other idea would be read footnoted editions or glossaries or summaries of Shakespeare's speeches and plays, because the language can be different and difficult to understand, and so a footnoted edition or version might be easier to start with. All right, number 2, classical acting. This came into effect and prominence in the late 1800s. Can you conjure anything when you think of classical acting?
Satire plays were a combination of...
Well, classical acting is a traditional type of acting which is centered around the external behavior of the performer. It could also be called structural character portrayal. Unlike other methods, classical acting is not so much a single technique as it is an umbrella term that encompasses several different approaches into acting that originated in Europe between the 5th and 16th centuries. Classical actors focus on voice and body control, improvisation, external stimuli, and script analysis or text analysis. Classical acting stands out for its emphasis on articulate speech and deliberate physicality. Some well-known classically trained actors include Angela Bassett, Kate Blanchett, Viola Davis, and Anthony Hopkins. Some techniques you might find on classical acting curriculum include viewpoints, the Alexander technique, Skinner releasing technique, and phonetics. All right, here's an action idea to help you get familiar with this approach. Practice voice control and dictation because your ability to project and enunciate is important by using a monologue or a scene or script, and practice it and record yourself with an emphasis on enunciation and articulating your words. Think about it as if it's important for your character to do so, or if your character is practicing articulation. Alternatively, get a voice coach and work with a voice coach. This is actually something I want to do at some point. All right, number 3, Stanislavski. Stanislavski's system came out around 1909. And Konstantin Stanislavski is a name every actor should know. As co-founder of the Moscow Art Theater, he revolutionized the approach actors take to text. Stanislavski paid special attention to the human soul. His concern with the specifics of human behavior would revolutionize acting and impact the craft to this day. With an emphasis on the emotional life of the character, Stanislavski also added an extra seriousness to the work of the actor. The theater artist became an academic thinker and an emotional observer of the world. He developed what was known as the system, an articulated approach to acting that revolves around his concept of the magic if. He encouraged his actors to consider what they would do if they were in the same circumstances of the characters they were playing. This approach would later evolve through Stanislavski's disciples. In rehearsal, the actor searches the inner motives to justify action and the definition of what the character seeks to achieve at any given moment, i.e., a task. Stanislavski's earliest reference to his system appears in 1909, the same year that he first incorporated it into his rehearsal process. Okay, here's an action idea to experiment with this approach. Put yourself in the character's shoes by asking these questions and writing down the answers. For an upcoming scene for a class or a project or a film, put yourself in the character's shoes by asking yourself these questions and writing down the answers. What would I be doing if I were living where this character lives? How would I be acting if I had this character's struggle or challenge right now? And finally, how would I feel if people were treating me like this character is being treated? All right, number 4, the Meisner technique. Meisner wrote his book, Sanford Meisner on Acting in 1987. Sanford Meisner encouraged actors not to be so intellectually or imaginatively obsessed. When actors were so focused, he concealed they got too internal. He basically said you can't perform well if you're inside your own head. Meisner's technique relies on sanding down the psychological mountain making of an actor's work and instead focusing on the simplicity of instincts. Through repetition exercises, his students naturally, meditatively removed all the psychological connotations from an action or line, revealing the character's most humble form. This, Meisner believed, was the way to a character's naturalness. Some of the techniques include the repetition exercises to build spontaneity, living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, emotional preparation, listening, and instincts. As Elia Kazan once said, take it from a director. If you get an actor that Sandy Meisner has trained, you've been blessed. Well-known Meisner actors include Diane Keaton, Tom Cruise, and the late Chadwick Boseman. Here's an action idea to help you get familiar with the Meisner approach. Identify a scene and an emotion needed for the scene. Create an imaginary circumstance to create that feeling or emotion. Write down the imaginary circumstance. Then think about this imaginary circumstance for 60 seconds, and then rehearse the scene that requires the same emotion immediately following after it. Repeat this process 5 times until you condition or pair the imaginary circumstance and the emotion with that scene. All right, number 5, Stella Adler. Stella Adler published The Technique of Acting in 1988. Stella Adler, another Stanislavski disciple, rivaled Strasberg's approach with passion. Adler was very strong-willed, notoriously demanding as a teacher, and pushed her students to create convincing moments imaginatively. The lessons from her New York City studio have been well chronicled, and her phrases are often quoted. Adler insisted that the imagination of the artist could be just as vivid as one's natural experiences. She was all about imagination. She said imagination was much safer to use emotionally. Adler's technique encourages actors to develop deep visions and metaphors for the circumstances of their characters. These visions would be used as creative nourishment for making convincing artistic choices. The Stella Adler technique differs by focusing on the actor's imagination, social political context, and the emotional realism in a way that blends elements of Stanislavski's method with Adler's own insights. Everything begins with action, she says. If you cannot name what you are doing, the audience cannot follow your journey. She coined the term sociological imagination. Where was the character educated? What was the economic class? What were the historical moments? Clues in the script, plus outside research, allows actors to inhabit customs, speech rhythms, and moral codes different from their own. Some of her students included Selma Hayek, Diana Ross, Marlon Brando, and Robert De Niro. Marlon Brando helped her write the manual, The Art of Acting. Okay, an action idea to help you get familiar with the Adler approach would be the room exercise. This is one I found that I really like. The purpose is to build environment through imagination. So go ahead and close your eyes. Visualize entering your childhood bedroom as the character. Rearrange the furniture to match the script's era and geography. Then open your eyes and mime interacting with the invisible props, like pulling curtains, testing the mattress, and smelling the air or touching objects in the room. Then speak a line from your scene while fully aware of this invisible architecture. All right, number 6, the Uta Hagen technique. Uta Hagen encouraged the concept of substitution. Uta Hagen continued to tease out Stanislavski's thinking by encouraging the concept of substitution to relate to the character. So Uta Hagen refined the notion of using an actor's personal experiences to help draw a natural reaction to a character's circumstance. So if the actor had not lived through the experience of the character in the play, the actor would conjure the memory or experience of a similar event that had happened in his or her life and then adjust the stakes appropriately. Famous practitioners of Uta Hagen include Sigourney Weaver, Jack Lemmon, and Judy Garland. So an action idea for the Uta Hagen approach would be identify a scene for an upcoming class or a film or television or acting project, and then write down a similar experience that you had in your life that reminds you of the scene. Also ask yourself, what emotion did I have in this life experience? And what emotion does the character have in the scene? And how are they similar and how are they different?